Thank you for joining today. I'm Ryan Neiman, Sports District Radio here. Follow us on Twitter at SDistrictRadio, and we are on the web at fsportsu.com. Thanks again for joining us today. I'm Ryan Neiman, Sports District Radio, Sports Talk with an edge. It's Friday. Lots going on this weekend in sports. We have the Kentucky Derby tomorrow. We got 3 Game 7s in the NBA. NHL playoffs are beginning as well. A great weekend for all you sports fans out there. And we have a guest today talking about all the upcoming sports news that are going on right now. Is ABC 19 Sports and Tennessee reporters joining us right now. Brandon Keys. How you doing, Brandon?
Doing well, man. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks again for joining the program today. How was it over there in Tennessee? Are you guys getting rain still? I know you guys had some bad weather the last few days.
Oh, man. It's like as soon as winter gets out, spring brings in a lot of rain. Yeah, things are going a little bit better now. But, yeah, South definitely took a pounding over the last couple of days. Just trying to catch a break down here.
Yeah, I went to Tennessee my first time 2 weeks ago. I went to Nashville, which I absolutely love. So I'm glad I left just in the right time.
Oh, no, yeah, you did. No, but definitely, Nashville's a great place, and a lot of people love down there. Hey, Vanderbilt's having success, so when that can happen, Nashville's a pretty rocking place. Yeah,
I unfortunately gained a couple pounds with all that barbecue I ate over there, though. You guys have great barbecue.
Yeah, no, that's part of the allure, man. You come for the barbecue, you stay for the barbecue.
And I also I stopped at Gatlinburg near the Smoky Mountains. And over there, I also bought some moonshine. You ever have moonshine before?
Are you talking about Smoky Mountain moonshine?
Yes.
That is the stuff. Listen, man, that stuff is the stuff of legend around here.
I think I kind of went...
What flavor did you get? What would you go with?
I got the maple syrup flavor.
Good call.
Good call. I've been putting on my pancakes. I even be pouring into my cereal because how good it's been tasting.
So you got Nashville, then you get East Tennessee. Did you happen to make it towards Memphis, or?
Yeah, we headed to Gatlinburg, and then we just stopped, and we just drove straight to Nashville right after that.
Nice.
But I heard, is this true, that people say not to buy moonshine in Kentucky? Is that the truth?
That is true. I would argue that you shouldn't buy anything from that Commonwealth. Out of the 3 Commonwealths, it's the worst.
Well, thanks for the tip. Next time I go there, I'm thinking about stopping at Louisville in a couple of weeks, so I won't buy any moonshine in Kentucky. But Brandon is joining us right now, talking about various topics in the sports realm. Next week is the NFL draft, and Texans general manager Rick Smith said he knows which player he would take with the first overall pick next week. He just isn't sure that Houston's picking will be there yet. Smith declined to name the teams he's spoken with, nor did he say if anything is progress if they might trade the pick. He says, I know the order of our board. If we select first, it's a unique opportunity to be the first pick. If we do select there, I know who would feel good about at that position. Now, are you buying this whole situation about Rick Smith? Do you think he knows who he wants to pick yet?
I think he knows something, and I think he knows the morale of his team. I think this team is a little bit changed from last season, but you still got veteran offensive players. I think you look at Andre Johnson, you look at his wants, his needs, his desires. The same thing for Arian Foster. What do they want? What do they need? And then you look at an offensive-minded coach like Bill O'Brien, and you have all that input being thrown into the decision for draft day. I would imagine they know a little bit about what their options are. Of course, if something, and this is where it becomes difficult. Do you take a defensive player, either Khalil Mack or Jadeveon Clowney, one is obviously got freakish potential over the other, one is by all accounts a 10-time Pro Bowler guarantee. And you look on the offensive side, you're taking a little bit more of a chance with potentially a Johnny Manziel. But if you're Bill O'Brien, you've got to keep those offensive players on your team happy. And so is Ryan Fitzpatrick, who I'm familiar with in Tennessee, is he somebody that's going to be able to facilitate and keep your offensive side of the ball happy in addition to fans? So I think when the general manager, when they're making those kind of statements, so they know kind of what they want. I think they've had a lot of input from the team, and for my money, I would say that the offensive side of the football at Houston is more important than taking a Khalil Mack or Jadeveon Clowney. I think they know what they want. I think they're just maybe afraid to show their hand a little bit, because honestly, in every draft, and obviously I'm alluding to, I think it's Manziel, but I think in every draft prognostication, he's been all over the board. He's been from 16 to dropping out of the first 3 rounds to wherever. So I think they know. But then you look at the other side of it too. Atlanta has really been the one rumored to want to move up to that spot. So would Manziel be available later on? I think the team Houston is eyeing. They just got to weigh their options at this point.
And as you just touched on, there are rumors that the Atlanta Falcons are pushing hard to trade with the Texans for that number 1 pick. Do you think that they should trade that pick, or what do you think they should do?
I mean, I think they've got to decide what they need right now, and if that fits them long term as well. A lot of the times when you're making a first round pick, you're either planning for the future or you're going for broke right now, and not often do you find where it's one and the same. You usually have to make a choice. In this instance, I think that if Houston were to take any offensive player, I think it would be the best for right now and the best moving forward. I do not think a defensive player is what they need. So I think unless they're not compelled by an offensive player right away, they're not compelled by somebody electrifying to really fit their offense, which I believe is Manziel. I just don't know if he's going to line up exactly with what O'Brien sees conventionally. But that being said, I think the only way they make that trade with Atlanta is if they're just not sold on anybody.
All right, Brandon, we'll put you in the hot seat. You're the GM now. Who would you take as your number 1 pick?
If I'm Houston, and this is difficult, but I think it's not difficult if somebody wows you. And I think Manziel for Houston is something that you can tie. You can make a move with him, and I think that's okay. This isn't the Jamarcus Russell. This isn't taking somebody on pure talent. This is you taking somebody that you believe you can win with, and I think Johnny Manziel can win football games. I think that's who they'll take. I think they like him enough that Atlanta won't be able to pull off a trade, because you're talking about number 1 next year and number 1, and if you're Atlanta, that's strange for you to even offer that problem, because you had to trade everybody to get Julio Jones a couple years back. So they're willing to offer the bank, but I think Manziel is who Houston will take. I fully see that as what's going to happen.
Marketing side for Johnny Manziel, homegrown from Texas, wouldn't that be a great opportunity for the Texans to perhaps think about, because all the money possibilities they can make with Manziel's name?
Oh, and that's why Dallas has been rumored so heavily to bring in a guy like Manziel to increase the brand. I mean, Houston, was able to survive on maybe a list of offensive players that we weren't really familiar with. Matt Schaub's made a couple of Pro Bowls. Arian Buster kind of burst onto the scene, and Andre Johnson's kind of been Mr. Reliable. If you bring in somebody with the personality of Johnny Manziel, and if he's able to succeed with Bill O'Brien's offense, I think the sky's the limit, and you can really look at them challenging as a brand, the state of Texas. Maybe not the country as far as the Dallas Cowboys have a hold on some of those places, but maybe, in Texas they really could, and that's something you got to weigh in. I mean, the bottom line is, you want to win games in the NFL, but you want to make money, and I think that wherever Manziel goes, that's instant cash. You got to believe he's just so popular.
As I mentioned, the 2014 NFL Draft is 2 weeks later than usual this year. This means 2 extra weeks of predictions, and even those players who are locks for the first round have seen their names strewn all across various mock drafts and big boards. The most interesting first-round prospects are interesting not only for mysterious reasons, as all of their faults and virtues, which have been well documented, but for just how difficult it is to predict where they will wind up. Can this be one of the most intriguing and best first-round drafts in recent years in the NFL Draft?
I think this is going to be very interesting, and you've got a lot of potential players that can that can really go to a lot of different teams and change, some facets of what teams do. It's very, very compelling to see how some of these guys, whether they've had character issues or whether they've just, had a few miscues on the field, how drastically it's changed people's opinions. And you alluded to it, it's moved so much over the board that it seems like every day we're running in and out of players that have either done something or said something, or their pro day didn't go that well, or they threw in pads or they didn't throw, and it looks so much different from when they played last season. A lot of different factors are in this, and the extra time maybe has given, some teams, I guess, a little bit more time to scrutinize, but also to view some of these potential talents. It's definitely going to be must-see TV, I believe.
And shifting to college football, there's a somewhat controversy between the Pac-12 coaches and the SEC, as the Pac-12 coaches don't understand why the SEC won't put the same rules as everyone else. As in their spring conference call, Pac-12 coaches called out the SEC for the recent vote to only play 8 conference games as part of their schedule. The Pac-12 plays 9, and its coaches think the whole thing is a little unfair, as Stanford's head coach David Shaw said, "I've been saying this for 3 years now. I think we're going to go into playoff system and feed into one playoff system. We all need to play by the same rules." Do you agree with David Shaw that every team should have the same schedule, especially with that eventual playoff system happening?
No. This is ridiculous. This is like asking for, parity in Major League Baseball when you play in the AL West and you get to play the Seattle Mariners 19 times a year, and the Atlanta Braves play in the East, and they've got to play Washington 19 times a year. It's silly for you to expect. Now, that's the same number of games, mind you, but it's not the same talent. And that's really what the Pac-12 is trying to reference here. They're trying to say, hey, our Pac-12, our teams out here are just as good as the teams in the SEC. Now, we all know what happened in the bowl season. Somebody beats the SEC, either it's the Big 12 or the Big 10 or the Pac-12, and all the talk gets made, well, they wouldn't. This proves we're just as good. And I don't see it being, I don't see an Oregon State, who was in the top 25 at the beginning of last year, and I believe ended up finishing 5-7 or 6-6, being just as tough a game as that 9th game in the Pac-12 as, maybe playing, Alabama more than one. I don't see where they're making this. And I'm from SEC country, so I see the games up close. I know how physical they are. It is tough, and I think part of the reason why the SEC, obviously, they made that statement, they wanted to keep 8 games, they wanted to keep the rivalries that they've got. So I think the Pac-12 rule off based because they're only attacking the SEC in this sense. They're not asking the Big 12, they're not asking the Big 10. They're really just going straight for the SEC, and I think it shows a little bit of aggressiveness, but I wouldn't expect anything from the Pac-12, or any less from the Pac-12 at this point.
Just more sour grapes then from David Shaw calling out their schedule?
Am I surprised by it?
Is it more sour grapes? Do you just kind of just upset more than anything about it?
It seems like it. And for Stanford, for one, it's a little bit surprising given they're kind of quiet, they're kind of laid back, they kind of just go about their business. When everybody says they're going to lose to Oregon, they go out and just defensively shut them down. And, it's that kind of hard-nosed football team. So I'm a little surprised they're talking as much as they are because they're regularly in the Rose Bowl. At 12, I don't see how that extra Pac-12 game is really hurting them. To be honest, it sounds like more like they're complaining about playing that extra game than the SEC not playing it.
And the biggest story of the week and previously and this week, likely to be the entire summer as well, Donald Sterling was banned for life for his racial comments that he made with a recorded phone call with his girlfriend. The league's 10-member committee held a conference call to discuss the process for termination of Donald Sterling's ownership with the LA Clippers, and the committee has agreed to move forward quickly as possible, and they'll not meet until next week. Before I get your opinion about what you think is going to happen, what was your initial reaction to this whole Donald Sterling controversy?
I was surprised at the timing of it. I mean, for years now, we've heard rumors out of Los Angeles, rumors of racism, in any shape or form, not just in the workplace in LA, but in Donald Sterling's personal career. I can remember back in the day when guys used to play on that team, Kenyon Dooling, Michael Olowokandi, just some names that went off to play in other cities, but took their contracts from the Clippers and moved on and never said a word about Donald Sterling. And that kind of surprised me that it would take this audio to expose something that really everybody in the NBA knew. They just weren't willing to say something about it. Even Doc Rivers, who had played in the league, and everybody knew in circles what Donald Sterling was about, and just nobody brought it up. So that was surprising to me, because then that brings to light the failure, or maybe not apathetic is the word to use, maybe just the lack of interest, I guess, for the NBA and the rest of its owners to do something about Sterling before this point. That's what surprised me about it. It was not that he said it, or not that it was even revealed, but that the NBA now decided to make a stance on it when they had 3 decades of proof to do that before. And you see that in his personal life with the awards that the NAACP in Los Angeles had given him. People just kind of took a blind eye, to think for whatever reason. Everybody had their different motives, but they all kind of backed up, but now their hands are kind of tied, given the audio, but it was just very surprising.
Do you put any blame on the previous commissioner, David Stern, for allowing somebody like Donald Sterling to continue this ownership in the Clippers?
Well, I think when you look at it that way, I think you have to understand that David Stern turning the NBA into what it is now, into what it can be as far as a global sport, is impressive. And he doesn't do that unless he has support from the owners. But I think by that token, he also didn't have a lot of support from the owners on ousting Sterling. Money was still available. Corporate sponsorship are still huge for the NBA just a couple of weeks ago, obviously. So, David Stern's hands, I think, were tied for the majority, after the Jordan years. His hands were tied because, you have to have a vote of those owners to decide to remove somebody for a situation like this. And I don't think the owners are willing to do it, not at that time. Of course, now once you see the droves of corporate sponsorship leaving the Clippers and potentially the NBA, that's when a move is made. It kind of shows you that maybe David Stern and maybe even Adam Silver doesn't have as much control, and maybe commissioners as a group, whether it be NFL, MLB, what have you, don't have as much control when it's the owners collectively that pay their salaries and decide what kind of ultimately statements or stances they take on social issues.
Silver said he urges all owners to force the sale of the LA Clippers team, hoping that there's a 29-0 vote for the urging of the sale of the team. How do you see this playing out?
Well, I mean, I think that is in itself kind of strange. I believe they only had one other ownership group where they bought out a team. It might have been George Shinn with Charlotte or New Orleans. And I could be wrong about that, but I think the price tag was like $350 million. You're talking about $700, $800, maybe $900 million for this Clippers team, and that's going to go in Donald Sterling's pocket. I mean, a lot of people are griping, sell the team. He's going to get a lot of bank off of this. Obviously it would be less than what he would make marketability-wise off of the sponsorship of the team, but he's still going to make a ton of money on this, and I don't think people realize that. I mean, they're going to hand him a lot of cash. So it just depends on who wants to get involved with this, who wants to buy it, who wants to sit through the process. I believe in, this is something you didn't bring up, but, if he does have cancer, as reports have alluded to, how much time do you have to sell it? And if it goes to his estate, would his wife then, fight for the team? The team loves her. So, I mean, you got to look at how what his health like, and if it's okay long enough for him to survive in litigation. I think he would prolong his sale of the team long enough to try and attract, push the price up.
In order for this force of the sale to be done, you need that 29-0 vote. There are rumors that some teams might vote against it to benefit them as there are rumors that if Sterling does own this team next season, Chris Paul and Blake Griffin might leave LA if Sterling is still the owner. Do you think any of these teams, the owners or GMs, have any hidden agendas for their own personal goals?
You got to look at who comes out in these playoffs. I mean, if any team would have a chance to get Chris Paul or Blake Griffin, obviously that would be very huge for anybody. We don't even know if Doc Rivers is going to stay. Do I see a team potentially balking at? I mean, this is a huge social issue now. Do I see a team deciding to take the heat for a personal agenda of trying to grab one of these players? I don't know. You got to look at the ownership. You got to look at these guys. How close are they with Donald Sterling? How, especially on that West Coast, how many of those owners, have been shot? How much does Golden State want some of those players? Or, it's a toss-up. I think not knowing the ownership groups. Heck, would Portland want to grab somebody, like that? Would they vote against it to try and lock somebody up? What would Chicago do? What would the Lakers do? Obviously, they wanted Chris Paul originally with that trade. So it's hard to say exactly. But I think I want to believe that the ownership and the NBA would do the right thing as a group and unanimously decide things as opposed to sitting back and waiting and hoping for something like that to come up. You just hope that's not the case.
We are only in May, but is this turning out to be one of the biggest stories of 2014 already?
I think unfortunately it has, and the problem with that is what I alluded to earlier. He'd owned this team. I believe they moved from Buffalo in the late 70s. I think he'd owned them since 81. And you just look at how long, potentially, this racism and his views, his ideas, his thought process could have gone on in the LA area, and people just turned a blind eye to it. I think it should have been a story way before now. And the fact that it's blowing up in 2014 it's probably going to be one of the bigger stories. But that's the sad part, is it took till 2014 for it to really come to light on a national stage.
Another story that happened in the NBA, LA Lakers coach Mike D'Antoni has resigned from his post as head coach after 2 seasons. In 2 years, his record was 67-87. They went 27-55 this year. It was the first time in Kobe's playing time in the LA that they missed the postseason since 2004 and 2005. The Lakers will pay D'Antoni an undisclosed amount of $4 million, in which he was owed part of his resignation and his final year that he resigned for. Who do you see replacing D'Antoni?
And that's what everybody wants to know right now. Is it Doc Rivers? I can see him if things don't work out in LA, and he might just be tired of what goes on at the Clippers. I think that might be a natural fit for him to just stay in the Staples Center and look at the Lakers. I don't think we heard reports, a random report before that national championship game with Kentucky from rogue Kentucky Wildcat Rex Chapman, who made the revelation, it seems now, that John Calipari was in the running for the Lakers job, and they're going to talk to him. Do I think he moves? It's hard to say. Do you want to try at the NBA again? That's the question he's got to answer. And why would you leave Kentucky when you've got that barrage of young talent coming back? And with the current Kentucky team beat the Lakers right now, that's a good question. So I don't know if Calipari moves. They're going to talk to Kevin Ollie. There's been some reports about that. Playing a 13-year NBA career. He played with like 11 different teams, but still, the NBA likes that kind of experience, especially now since the NBA is in the business of hiring former players, as we saw with Jason Kidd. That brings up, Derek Fisher's name has been tossed around, and he's still playing, of course, for the Oklahoma City Thunder. So it could go any direction. I think they can do what they want. I think obviously Phil would have been the choice, but since he's in New York, I think it's all bets are off with anybody. I really think that depending on the right situation, it could be Calipari. It could be Doc Rivers. It could be Derek Fisher. Though I don't know if him working with Kobe that well, could you scream and yell at Kobe? I don't know if Derek Fisher can do that. But it's going to be somebody that Kobe's definitely got a hand in picking, I think, this time, because he's going to be, 35, 36, and it's basically going to be down to him and Jeannie Buss on who they pick.
And let's talk quickly about Kobe Bryant. It's been much documented that he really did not enjoy playing with D'Antoni, didn't buy into his system at all. Did he have a big say in whether D'Antoni was coming back next year or not?
Well, I can tell you who didn't, and that's Steve Nash. And Steve Nash already made the comments that he was staying on the books next year just for the money. And, of course, he was a big supporter, got to the Western Conference Finals with D'Antoni back in Phoenix when he had those MVP years. And I can guarantee you L.A. did not listen to anything Steve Nash did. So that would lead you to believe that every kind of decision they made was based on Kobe Bryant's opinion. He's really the only big star on the books that they're going to reference for any kind of decision making, and I think Jeannie Buss holds his opinion very high, and you've got to keep the Black Mamba happy. So I think yes, I think he definitely did not mesh well with D'Antoni, obviously, but I think he definitely had a say in whether or not he stayed, and of course the forced resignation of D'Antoni. I mean, I don't think they wanted to fire him. I really think they were going to they were going to stick with it. Strangely enough, if you didn't let him go after the first year, I thought that was a train wreck. I mean, Larry Brown got let go in New York after 1 year, and he potentially, could move him around the next year. I don't think D'Antoni had any hope of switching that around, and that from what you mentioned, that Kobe was just not on board with him at all.
And before we let you go, the Memphis Grizzlies are squaring off with Oklahoma City Thunder Saturday night, Game 7. Who do you have winning that game?
Oh, wow. I got to go with the Grizz. Look, the defense in the NBA is something to be laughed at times, but the way these officials are calling games now, it can be hit or miss on whether or not they're going to call fouls or if they're not. I think the more physical team, the more physically disciplined team is going to win that seventh game. And I think that's Memphis. And I'm a homer. I am a Memphis fan.
That's why I asked.
I just think that Kevin Durant is going to have another one of those off games. We would have never dreamed that Kevin was going to have such a rough a time with Tony Allen, but he has. And outside of last night or the night before, the 36 points, he's had a very average series, and I think he's due for that again. I think the Grizzlies are really going to play well on the road.
Well, Brandon, thanks again for joining today, talking about all these sports topics. Where can everybody find you on the web?
You can find me online. Hit me up on Twitter. It's Slightly Off Keys is the handle, Slightly Off Keys. You can find me there. Just look for me there. I'll tweet some updates of where I'm going to be, what I'm covering at the time, and just find out info there. I appreciate you having me on.
And I was slightly off keys when I had that moonshine in Tennessee, so I could relate a little bit.
That's where it comes from, man. You got to stay slightly off a little bit.
All right, Brandon, thanks again for joining, and have a great weekend.
All right, thanks, Ryan. You too, buddy.
That was Brandon Keys, NBC 19 sports writer and reporter from Tennessee, joining us right now, talking about what the Texans would do with the number one draft pick. The whole Donald Sterling story, which is never, ever going to end. It's going to go on forever, folks, unfortunately. Like the Justin Bieber fans are going to go on forever. And about Mike D'Antoni resigning with the LA Lakers and what is next for that organization. Well, thanks again for joining today. I am Ryan Neiman, Sports District Radio, Sports Talk with an Edge. Follow us on Twitter at SDistrict Radio. I'm Ryan Neiman. This has been Sports District Radio, Sports Talk with an Edge.